Welcome, gorgeous, to Women Who Get What They Want podcast and newsletter brought to you by and produced by the Desktop Vanity Substack. We're here through feminist media studies. We recenter women online through work and through interpersonal relationships, helping us evolve and grow to becoming the dream version of ourselves that has it all and is the happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest version of ourselves. So let's get into the itemized TLDR list. Number one, we're going to be talking about why women love Halloween more than men and what is post Halloween loneliness and is it the new seasonal depression that we think of? Two, female friendships under fire, basically the gap in emotional care, and why is it so hard for girls to make friends and be friends. Three is going to be inclusivity versus exclusivity marketing in the beauty industry. I'll be elaborating on my research article, which is a case study between Sol de Janeiro and Chanel. That full article will be on my Substack in mid-October. For the big finale, we will be talking about why women love dark romance, and we're going to give a sweet, snappy guide to its discourse with a list of specific books to reference. If you want to use this as your shopping list, I'd say go for it, girl. Just don't invite your boyfriend to my house. I don't want him to put LSD in my candy. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We'll talk about that a little later. I know that we can discern fantasy from reality. We don't actually want that in real life, but it's going to be really interesting. And sneak peek, number five, we're going to bring up this thing called intersectionality, which is something that I hate to love to hate talking about. If you don't know what intersectionality is, it refers to our place in society through these levels of privilege and oppression attached to our personal identity. And it's a very good overlapping way of compounding the amount of stress and issues and oppressive qualities we have and some of the privilege we have, creating a more complex web of what discrimination can look like. So for example, if a woman of color was to sue her workplace maybe around 11 years ago, she would have to choose between gender discrimination or race discrimination. She can't have both. But with the concept of intersectionality, she can say that she has been discriminated against not just as a woman or a person of color, but as a woman of color, allowing this compounding of interest of privilege and oppression qualities within our identity that affect our standing in society and what invisible struggles we might face. I highly recommend Crenshaw's TED Talk. I'm going to give you a little thing right here, and I'll probably link it down below if I can. It's a really good TED Talk. She's the one who coined intersectionality, and she's a woman, in communications, which, let's face it, it's the physics of the social sciences, which means we're extra smart. But no, in actuality, I highly recommend watching it if you're in the mood to cry a little, but also because it's really important to know about. When I talk about feminist media studies, I mean the kind of feminism that supports everybody that has been victimized by the patriarchy, which, if you think about it, is a lot of ass people. Let's get straight into it. Post Halloween loneliness is a real thing, and it definitely only affects women. Written by Weekman K., The Post Halloween Blues Are Real, published from In the Now, talks about how post Halloween blues are a real thing, and they later elaborate why it primarily affects women. As the month of October leads up to Halloween, we are given a sense of bloody suspension that social media, streaming, and whatever is at Target or Michael's can perpetuate. This suspense gets crashed by another otherwise anticlimactic Halloween, especially as a modern social landscape challenges that are defining experience of friendship with women now can imagine that a lot of group of Halloween costumes most likely fall through. This suspense gets crashed by another otherwise anticlimactic Halloween, especially as the modern social landscapes challenges the defining experiences of female friendship. With women, we can imagine that a lot of group Halloween costumes most likely fall through. Wiekman explains that the suspense is also social pressure, aka FOMO, that is amplified by our need to perform womanhood along with us carrying the emotional connection burden, which we'll also get into when we're discussing women loneliness and why it's actually tied to Halloween. Now, I really want to get into things like the social pressure and FOMO and the need to perform femininity. And this goes into a little bit of my article where I blabbed about the economics of slutty costumes. Basically, we as women are figures of the economy. The way we dress, the way we spend, the way we do things reflects not just our household and how our husbands or how our partners are taking care of us and their financial standing, but it also affects the global economy. Whether business casual is coming into fashion. Guys, I wore a blazer today to university. That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. But there's a lot of examples. When we play dress up, when we perform our femininity, we in some way are reflecting the needs that we have in society, whether the things that we are lacking or the things that are in surplus. So basically, no matter what we do, especially if we take into account fashion trends and also something glorified like Halloween costumes, we cannot help it. We are figures of capitalism and the economy, and we don't get paid extra for that. We don't get paid extra for being the face of that. It's not fair. How this social pressure, not just to dress up, but to spend a lot of money on your costume, to do a lot of this, to do a lot of that, to look slutty and hot and gorgeous. And not everybody really wants to do that. And that's why coming up in my second newsletter of Women Who Get What They Want, there will be a section on underconsumption costume concepts that you can easily do based off things you might already have in your closet, which is super exciting. All the way from jeans to flannels to straw hats to an old Clinique eyeliner you could do to draw a little nose, all that stuff. So I recommend checking out the free newsletter because it is, well, free, and the Substack is kind of free. But the newsletter is free, and I will usually elaborate on other cute bite sized things. I consider it a good 12-minute read. Let's get into the emotional connection burden. Basically, compared to other people, us as women, we experience a gap of emotional connection where we feel the need to be the kinship makers, which is going to be quoted in another article that I'm going to get into in a bit. Basically, what happens is that us as women, we are held to the pressure of maintaining healthy relationships, not just for us, but on behalf of coworkers, bosses, partners, friends, and family, and children, etc. That's making sure that we remember birthdays and occasions and we get the right gift and we do this and that. And the problem is that especially in modern friendship now, plans are falling through. It's really hard to maintain healthy relationships. So of course, women are getting this probably very centered around Halloween post blues because of the fatigue. And the reason why we are struggling to maintain healthy relationships as Gen Z women, the reason why we're struggling to be good friends is because of this emotional connection fatigue, where we're always the one trying to plan out things, make friends, do this, try and put things together, plans fall through, you get ghosted, you get unfollowed, and then followed again, and then followed, and then unfollowed again. All those weird things that just baffle me sometimes. And basically, we in this social landscape, Halloween is a perfect way to research everything sociology wise, from all the way from things from FOMO to economics to gender studies as well. It's such a big, intense thing. And of course, we experience this intense high period of aesthetic communities and these perfect metaphors for what is the most empowering, liberating, feministic perspective, which is of a witch. So that's why I feel like no matter where you are on the spectrum, women do love Halloween. According to Soleil KJ in 2017's Witches, Sluts, Feminists, Conjuring the Sex Positive, we learned that as we talk about post Halloween loneliness, it's not just about the party being over, it's the feeling of losing that temporary permission to be powerful, to be witchy, to cackle, to be okay, maybe being like, that's the best that I have. I do apologize. Once October actually comes around, I'll do better, I promise. But in actuality, we get to embrace the most empowering archetype that there is in modern women history and beyond. That is the witch. She is basically a healer and an herbalist. She's a sage, she's a studier, she's intelligent. She's basically was the first type of doctor to exist, while these dudes in the Middle Ages were playing with mercury, hoping it would give someone wings. No, us girls, we got it undercover. That's basically what our deal was. And we were rebellious and liberated. we masturbated, we danced in the woods. That's what we did. Halloween in modern ways gives us the ability to express this emotion that we're other and these part it get I love it so much. I just can't get over it. But basically Halloween gives women the subconscious opportunity to express this form of liberation where otherwise throughout other parts of the year most of society would discourage these kinds of behaviors in women and these outwardly emotions felt and perceived. Even emotions not perceived by others, we as women still hold back from letting us feel and perceive them in ourselves because of society and the patriarchal norms that hide us, that don't want us to have this freedom. And of course, this will come full circle as we elaborate into things like the dark romance genre, where we're actually going to talk about those things like a patriarchal society, intersectionality, and along with other cool things like how it's supposed to be liberating and also why it's sometimes not, and the potential dangers. But in actuality, that's why Halloween matters so much more to women because it's not just about empowerment and rebellion and all that stuff. It's also about performing our femininity for the sake of a totalitarianism capitalistic society where it's quite obvious that our dollar is more powerful than our words in the sense of freedom of speech. Like, think about the Starbucks boycotts or Jimmy Kimmel getting back on air. Obviously the dollar matters more. So the way women spend our money and dress ourselves and present our femininity is a direct expression of the economy. And so in so many ways. So basically it doesn't matter. Halloween matters more to women, not just through how we position ourselves in society, but also how we view ourselves and also how we make plans. We get so excited. Think of the girls online who are starting to conceptualize Halloween costume ideas in September or in August, and you're already seeing viral posts about it. Women love Halloween. It matters more to us because then the crash will happen. Hence the beginning of women's loneliness epidemic. I already talked about the kin keepers and how we are the ones that are in charge of this endless emotional labor that also keeps us structurally lonely. And throughout this time, next thing you know, November 1st hits, and then we're re zapped back into a patriarchal society where we are given all of the labor and none of the recognition. And next thing you know, Thanksgiving's around the corner. So, along with the emotional kin keeping, kinship labor, we are also doing physical labor, doing housework and homemaking that otherwise is disproportionately prioritized and disproportionately given to women compared to men. Because, of course, for us, it's our job, but if men do decide to stir the pot of mashed potatoes, keep in mind, probably poorly, they get celebrated. Oh, it's so lumpy, but good job. Good job. You're such a good husband father figure. But Peterson AH quotes, women are socialized to be the kin keepers, the ones who maintain the social fabric not just for themselves, but for their partners and their families. This work is not just uncompensated, it's largely invisible. Basically, this is from their Substack article called The Friendship Recession from the Cultural Studies Substack. It's really interesting, top tier, would recommend. But yeah, Anne Ellen Pearson recommends that this is the key to possibly the physical and emotional loneliness. That even if we're not physically lonely, we're emotionally very lonely because we have been given all this invisible, unseen labor. And of course, that leads us into loving romantasy and of course dark romantasy and dark romance. All of the attention is on us excessively, obsessively, where it's becoming incredibly powerful, this sense of loneliness that happens with us. And basically we're swooped into this patriarchal landscape again, and it feels like we're hungover all at the same time because let's face it, some of us probably are. And to keep in mind that we are actually struggling to be good friends. We're struggling to be good friends. Focus on the Family, 2003, a critical analysis of the social and political movement, feminism psychology, has basically been paraphrased into saying that there are consistent, explored, and societal structures that prioritize heterosexual romantic partners and a nuclear family above all relationships, basically making it harder for women to maintain other relationships with other women, demoting it to a secondary status. And I know what you're thinking, no. And I'm like, keep in mind, besties, whoever is watching this video, you are my bestie. You are not a secondary status. No, you are my bestie, my one, my tribe, my everything. You are like my love. You don't gotta worry. A lot of young women don't really know how to make and maintain healthy female relationships long term. And people don't realize this, but having more female friends actively as a girl is one of the most safest things anyone can do. It's a safety thing. It's a safety thing because that's what protects us from potentially abusive partners, from bad work environments, from bad situations. Being able to have an out, someone to rely on, someone to be like, hey, text me when you get home safe. Hey, let me walk you to your car. Hey, text me when you got home safe. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, let me fix this. Your bra strap is showing. We don't really have that anymore. We don't have girls that do that anymore. At least in my perspective, who knows? Maybe I'm just being bullied at university. In actuality, one of the reasons why we feel more lonely is because we are such emotional beings that we crave something deeper that otherwise is life sustaining. Like that's like female friendships keep us alive. They keep us safe. Don't like discredit that. All right, let me take a sip of my tea and then we're going to get into inclusivity and exclusivity marketing in the beauty industry. Sweet late night caffeination, very dangerous. Tell me, do you own something from Sol de Janeiro or Chanel? I am very lucky and blessed and privileged to know that I have something from both. And today I want to do a really brief, small introduction and research recap on my research article that will be posted in October called Inclusivity versus Exclusivity in Beauty Industry Marketing, a case study of Sol de Janeiro versus Chanel. So I'm going to review that a little bit. I'm going to add to it, but I'm going to keep that light, heavy, and steady. And I'd rather just do that as a Q&A. But I'll definitely elaborate on my research where I focus a lot on the origin stories that play a really big role into the messaging and everything like that. And I also compare Sol de Janeiro and Chanel through different waves of feminism. So Chanel is probably first wave feminism, and then Sol de Janeiro is probably third wave feminism. And we'll get a little deep into that. Let me quote The Power of Inclusive Marketing 2020 from the Harvard Business Review by Johnson A. Quote, inclusive marketing is not about showcasing diversity for the sake of appearances. It's a strategy that aims to create a universal sense of belonging, making the customer feel truly seen, valued, and understood by the brand. Basically, when we think about beauty brands like Fenty Beauty and Sol de Janeiro, as the Harvard Business Review points out, it makes people feel seen, valued, and understood. It creates this sense of loyalty and community where you know that this brand will be the one to hold your hair back in the club toilet when you've drank too much. Like they will be your bestie. So inclusivity generally plays an actual role. And spoiler alert, well, I'm not going to spoil. We're going to talk about in my article whether inclusivity or exclusivity sells better. Oh, I just couldn't help it. But let's go ahead and get into Sol de Janeiro's origin story. I love this. So we think about, I believe her name is Hella Yang. Basically, she's worked for Estee Lauder for tons of years. And basically, in 2015, she launched Sol de Janeiro because she was inspired by the body positive beach culture in Brazil, where she was living with her partner at the time, feeling super good about her bod. She was a little self conscious about her baby bump. But then she saw this beautiful tsunami of body positivity, so that basically inspired her to come up with the concept of Sol de Janeiro in 2015. And you're thinking, how is that such a big deal? Well, the reason why Sol de Janeiro is a big deal is because it was the first of its kind. Because before that time, you had Bath and Body Works, but it was Bath and Body Works. And you either had really boring body lotions that were for people with eczema and everything like that that needed it, or you had anti-aging body lotions that were for sensitive or very specific skin issues that were super expensive and luxury and high end. So basically, Sol de Janeiro met a gap. I don't know what to say. Basically, they met a market gap where they made something affordable, good for the body, and also good for the nose because it smells uber, uber good. But basically, it's like day and night, really. If you wanted to travel back in time, I used to think when I was younger I was ugly. No, it was just before TikTok and Skin Talk, and it was before press on nails became such a big thing. Like legit. It's so true, honestly. Because back then, beauty and everything wasn't really that accessible. There was not a lot of drugstore stuff. You maybe had L'Oreal, but that was for older women. And you had a lot of fancy things. And you had Clinique and Proactive. And even that was kind of expensive for a girl that didn't grow up with a lot of money. So basically, yeah, brands like Sol de Janeiro, they launched because they were a big deal. Brands like The Ordinary launched and they became a big deal because they met that gap where they not just positioned themselves in that way, but they priced themselves in that way too. And now they're big, beautiful, and gorgeous, and they've won many awards. And now they're uh, and now they sold the majority of stake to Lacatin in 2021, which is really cool because they're all about making sure things. They're all about making sure things stay eco-friendly and good and everything like that. So that's why they partnered with them. And in fact, I work at Ulta now, and I did not step into Ulta till I went to apply for a job. And I did get it. And it's been a lot of happy years working behind the counter, in front of the counter, all of that great stuff. And I even helped Sol de Janeiro with a Sol de Janeiro event. I sold like $500 worth of Sol de Janeiro. It was so much fun. But I did not learn till recently that apparently it's hard to get a job at Ulta. But apparently I had the stuff. I just always thought it was a fluke, and I have to give myself the benefit of doubt for that as well. Now, how does Sol de Janeiro get involved with third wave feminism? I think about it through the fact that we're decoding receiving messages that we have always been interpreting of how brands value us. And we have learned so far that in media and in the internet, it is never a neutral place ever. So, what you say, no matter what, will always have subtext, whether we like it or not. It's just going to happen. So, yeah, subtext. And the worst part is that if we're not present with our concept of our brand and our identity, we can allow people to misinterpret our subtext, which is a no bueno situation. But there is a lot of nonverbal signaling in marketing to the point where, just like art, marketing in itself can be political. And basically, talking about inclusivity can be a statement that can make or break in this America that we live in. That's a big deal. Yes, but marketing will someday be viewed as political or polarizing in some way, and the subjugated knowledge that they try to lean into and dominate in ways of knowing and celebrating the human body, which is a big deal. They, whew, whew, I'm so exhausted. But no, it's a big deal. They celebrate the human body, which is a way of moving outward and speaking outward rather than gatekeeping. While I personally feel like first wave feminism is in response to things like gatekeeping in the communications based field for Chanel. The problem is, though, with inclusivity based marketing, we have to worry about the enthusiastic infatuation, where that can lead to cultural appropriation, which is a very consistent worry that people can have. The rationale to explain this further would have to probably be said in the article, but otherwise, that is something to be worried about, especially the performance that happens with inclusivity based marketing, where we're always worried that if a brand really cares or they just trying to expand their audience. Now, I would say a really good way to tell if a brand is not actually inclusive and they're performing inclusivity for the sake of marketing is my key one indicator, and that is, what month is it? Question mark. What month is it? And is it only that month, as an example? Otherwise, if it's just through images on their social media and it's not through actions, it's probably just performative, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead and talk about Chanel's origin story, which I think is so interesting and terrible because Coco Chanel, or Gabriella Chanel, was known for not being a nice person. She was known for being a very difficult person to work with, and she was low key, my hair, she was low key a sugar baby. Coco Chanel was a sugar baby. She basically was not just a German spy during World War II. She also Basically, to fund her first boutique, her hat boutique, she basically positioned two general rivals against each other, being like, oh, so and so is giving me more money. He must love me more. And then they're like, nine, I love you more. And then that's basically what that was. It's so terrible. But yeah, not fun. Not fun at all. Not fun at all. But yeah, she was also the first person to consider having a fashion house to have a fragrance. Originally, those were two separate things, but that was a big success. And people say it's rumored that the original concoction of Chanel number 5 was a mistake and it was a whoopsie daisy, but it smelled good. And then there's a lot of other extra drama there with also her switching with manufacturers and everything because of what's that thing called when you like don't like what's that thing called? Oh, because of anti-Semitism. Because I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure Gabrielle Chanel was anti-Semitic. She was, but I'm gonna allegedly. We're gonna say allegedly. Allegedly, she was a difficult person with very difficult beliefs, and that affected who she worked with and who she gave credit to. But when we think about that, she was basically wanting to perform the first wave feminism of white femininity and exclusive power, where we focus on the exceptional woman, the trope versus the systematic change. The exceptional woman was the woman who rose above it all, was grace, was beauty, was thin, was white. And yeah, that's basically it. And she did not believe in corsets or anything like that. She was like the precursor to free the tit, you know? I can't put this on YouTube. Yes. By making more androgynous, like beautiful dresses and everything like that and stuff where you can hide your body a little bit more and you didn't have to show off everything, which in itself I actually think is kind of empowering because then if you're a little bloated one day, boom, privacy. On the other end of the spectrum, if you don't want people to know that you're pregante, guess what? They don't have to know right away. And that's a really good way to protect you as a person, whether that's through your career or as just the woman in the environment that you happen to be in. But she is definitely a first wave feminism, especially because she broke out into a male dominated industry, which apparently is women's fashion, basically liberating women from the physical constraints of corsets to now being in these more comfortable, natural types of clothing that were practical and slightly androgynous, but yet feminine in some capacity. But yet, she still perpetuated a value of privilege that was specific and limited to what femininity could be. So that's why I say first wave. She fits the mold for first wave feminism in general, especially when it comes to the performance of white femininity and how the regime of truth involved that no matter what, her representation and even Chanel's representation for a long time up until Karl Lagerfeld's death was mostly white, thin, wealthy European people. And that does not really align with everybody. And that's something that scholars critique a lot. Now, since Chanel is a privately owned company, we have no clue whether they actually make money with this inclusivity based approach or not. Will they change? They could. I doubt they'd make it work. It's been too many centuries, low key. But here's how I know. I have a I've had a friend who worked at the Chanel counter. They don't work there anymore because they pulled all their funding. And now that could be for a handful of other things out of their control, like tariffs, as an example, in the US. But there's a lot of subtle signs that show that Chanel is in a deficit. And when I was told that by a manager that Chanel is in a deficit, I didn't know if that was 100% true. But I do know sometimes people just overpay their employees, so therefore they could have that for a tax thing. And then it'll look like they're in the hole, but they're technically not. They just overpay their employees, uh, if that makes sense. But basically, that's something to worry about where we see Soleil Janeiro grow faster and faster and faster in the smallest amount of time, keeping in mind that in 2015 beauty startups and like beauty brands like they were new and shiny because they were breaking the mold, because we didn't have to worry about the newest beauty launch for a long time. There was just some staples. So yeah, they would get seed funding and venture capital, but not the same as it would now. Whew. This is what I wanted to get into. This is the academic article called Speaking Back to Academic Colonial Gatekeeping by Gloria Pinty, who is my professor, guys. Shout out to the queen. I wrote her article because I'm a stan. I'm a stan. Basically, she talks about colonial gatekeeping, which refers to the academic ideologies and practices that prioritize white and Western perspectives, leading to the dismissal of marginalized knowledges and identities, especially as we use it as a way of doing ethography, which is when we research other people's cultures, yet not being a part of that culture, instead of speaking about the culture and of it without being within it and communicating about it, which could allow people to redefine and dilute its original meanings by taking things like rituals and beautiful practices and putting them into behavioral and habitual habits, basically demoting and potentially demonizing people's cultures as a whole, which is a big no, no, no. Especially as we started seeing how other people would label other cultures as exotic. Yikesy. No, no, no. We don't want to do that. Absolutely not. But when I thought about her framework of gatekeeping versus basically speaking back, uh, instead of speaking back to the void, we speak back to the gate that won't let us in. And we're not trying to open the gate, we're simply just making an environment that doesn't need a gate to begin with. So Chanel is the gatekeeper, which emphasizes on heritage, chicness, and a form of high beauty that is set in colonial standards with prestige that is unattainable. Also, de Janeiro follows the philosophy that she coins as speaking back, where they involve body positivity, embracing vibrancy and diversity and culture, speaking back to this gatekeeping that basically has a brand that re-centers people of non-European descent in the beauty industry and as a beauty standard, rather than basically arguing and fighting. Them speaking back is simply just them recentering. It's very classy, I know. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Why women love dark romance and its discourse. Hopefully, this might actually have to be a part two if I have to split it up. Whew, okay. Basically, the appeal is that it's supposed to be a safe space to feel unsafe, which I know sounds super weird. But I think about Lee Mills' 2022 YouTube video called The Dark Romance Pipeline, and is quoted with, "The appeal of the dark romance hero isn't that he's powerful, but that his power is obsessively and entirely focused on the heroine. In a world where women often feel invisible, the fantasy of being subjected of such an intense, unwavering gaze is intoxicating." This quote from Mina Lee's video essay nails it, in my opinion, where the villains that we want in books are not the villains we have in real life. It's about the fantasy of being the absolute center of one of the most powerful people in our universe, whether that's our captor, or anything like that, etc. But when we look about it at a microscopic level, we could see that it really prioritizes readers that do feel lonely and talk about feeling invisible earlier on. We also think about Kane's 2023 article from Refinery 29 in Defense of Dark Romance, where they supposedly, according to them, develop a unique catharsis for people to, especially women, to express and process intense emotions that otherwise we're discouraged from processing and feeling, and in a fictional setting that's ultimately safe in our control because we can close the book and put it down at any time. I disagree with that. I think control would have to be not needing to put down the book, just being able to read through, having this character that is the weird one, that is the empowering person, and having that, empowerment to know that we can enjoy that story. That's my feeling. But they talk about having dark romance be this fictional sandbox of submission and fear and power, but I don't really think it's romantic in a way to label power dynamics in such a way, which gets into some of the first main controversies where people, in order to sell their books, will probably miscategorize it as dark romance when really it's erotic horror and it's not meant to be romantic in any way, shape, or form. And that causes discourse, which inevitably, in my opinion, causes more book sales. And I feel like when it comes to the most common types of drama that people talk about on Book Talk with Dark Romance will be these few. I'll label them off. Number one, it's just romanticizing abuse and toxic relationships. Two, fantasy is not reality. Let women enjoy things. As in, like, we can tell the difference between what's healthy and what's not. Three, the morally gray hero discourse. Four, the discourse itself is performance, which I did just talk about just a little bit. I did talk about just a little bit. But let's go ahead and redefine what dark romance is exactly. It's not just a spicy romance, but it's the basically presence of a transgressive themes of significant power imbalances, which is why I want to get into things like intersectionality, because supposedly it's supposed to be empowering for women. According to some people, it's supposed to be empowering to victims of SA or kidnapping or etc. But you know who's saying that? Who's saying that it's empowering? Authors, because they want you to buy the book. But the problem is the disconnect that people don't realize is that I want you to think about it. If you read a lot of dark romance, think about it. How many heroines in dark romance books? How many MCs? How many of them are a person of color? How many of them are queer? How many of them are a part of a community or a marginalized minority that has faced violence, that potentially has a much more disposition to facing violence in their life in some capacity or not, whether it's all the terrible things that I don't want to say because I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube. But think about it. Intersectionality plays such a huge role where the enjoyment of dark romance in itself and its representation is a privilege. Because, of course, it's going to be for the girls that have never experienced that before that love it. And I guess learning to cope and relive that trauma that you might have experienced could potentially help you as a coping mechanism. But I just don't find it. I don't get it. I personally don't get it. And I honestly think that romances need to promise a happily ever after. So that's a priority. So romance, dark romance, happily ever after, and power and imbalance. That's basically the vibes. Here's also some very common tropes. Mafia, criminal underworld, captor, captive, stalker romance, bully, taboo relationships, aka age gaps, step siblings, all that stuff. And we're going to get into some core psychological appeal. It's the fantasy of being the exception, where the hero might be the monster who burns down the whole world, but he'll stop to make sure that he has a blanket for you. I know, very scary. Or that touching into the darkness, but safely, letting people, especially women, feel the things and experience the things that they should not, as a woman who's demure and mindful, be experiencing in society. But the escapism is a low stakes reality because, like I said, you can close the book. Modern life is mundane. Bills, there's dinner. Dark romance offers an escapism where, of course, maybe we would love to get kidnapped by a mafia boss that wants to give us everything and marry us, especially if it means not cooking and cleaning or wiping butts. You know, I get it. I get where people are coming from. But in the end, the book TikTok engine basically rewards the drama and creates this metaverse of aesthetic over everything and the tropification of books, making it difficult for people to buy books that they like, especially because I notice with Book Talk, there's this sense of hazing that people go through, where I feel like people rush to recommend the most basically hardest ones to take. Like Haunting Adeline by H.C. Carlton is known for being a very difficult to read romantic dark romance book because it is so dark and it is so rough. And then we'll get people that are recommending new readers that book. First off, there's hazing. So there's hazing in it. They don't want people to enjoy it. I don't know what the deal is with that. But we have famous books that have experienced controversies in the dark romance. We have Haunting Adeline, where it talks about things like what is the consent that happens, non con versus con, which just is laid in terms for normal people speak for consent and not consensual intercourse. So, and I don't want to shame people or anything, but I want people to at least be aware of how much this language, demographic, and linguistics can actually harm people, especially if it leaks out of these very sectored communities online. Controversy two is Credence by Penelope Douglas. A teenage girl is sent to live in the mountains with her absent boyfriend's father and his two brothers. A taboo age gap, reverse harem romance ensues. Okay, I actually really like that, low key. I actually like that. I'm going to read that probably. Controversy three. Oh, I can't say that. That has a cuss word. I hope you and guys have been enjoying the content so far. Hopefully, it's not too long. I want to do really minimal editing. I just want to let you know my name is Mila Duffy. This is the Women Who Get What They Want podcast and free newsletter brought to you and produced by the Desktop Vanity Substack, where we, through feminist media studies, we recenter women's lives through the internet, through their work and their interpersonal relationships, giving them permission to embrace and indulge in the dream version of themselves that has it all, the happiest, wealthiest, and sexiest version of themselves that they could ever dream to be. If this was a vibe check, you should definitely check out my little shorts, and please check out the Substack, the free newsletter, and all of the good shit as well. And I hope you all have a most magical and fantastic evening. Bye bye.